Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Take a moment and look at the device you're watching this on. For most of you, it's probably a smartphone. It's your camera, your map, your connection to the world. Now, imagine it just vanished. Not just your phone, but the very idea of a smartphone. What if they were never invented? How would our world, our lives, and even our own minds be different? It sounds like science fiction, but this single change would create a ripple effect so massive, it would rewrite the last 2 decades of human history. Today, we're diving deep into that alternate reality. We'll explore a world without the constant connectivity, the instant information, and the digital society we built. Would it be a technological utopia of focused, deep thinkers, or a disconnected society struggling to keep up? Let's unplug and find out. What would a world without smartphones look like politically? It's a fascinating question. First, think about social movements and revolutions. The Arab Spring, for instance, was heavily fueled by citizens organizing and sharing information in real time through their phones. Without that tool, would these movements have gained the same momentum? Political organization would revert to older methods: word of mouth, printed flyers, and prearranged gatherings. This slower pace might give established powers more time to react and suppress dissent. Elections would also be completely different. Campaigning would rely more on traditional media like television, radio, and newspapers. The viral sound bites and social media blitzes that define modern politics wouldn't exist. Political discourse might become less polarized without the filter bubbles and echo chambers of social media algorithms, which are primarily accessed via smartphones. Instead of quick, emotional reactions to a tweet, people might engage in longer, more thoughtful discussions based on broadcast news or print journalism. Global diplomacy would also slow down. World leaders couldn't just fire off a tweet that sends shockwaves across the globe. International relations would be more formal, conducted through scheduled calls and official channels, potentially leading to more deliberate, less reactive foreign policy. The very nature of surveillance would change too. Governments wouldn't have the vast troves of location data, personal messages, and online activity that smartphones provide. This could mean more personal privacy for the average citizen, but also more difficulty for law enforcement in tracking criminal networks. The balance between security and liberty would be drawn on a completely different map. In this alternate timeline, political power might be more consolidated in the hands of those who control traditional media empires, and grassroots movements would face a much steeper, slower climb to make their voices heard. The political landscape would be less chaotic, perhaps, but also potentially less democratic and responsive to the will of the people. Now, let's shift our focus to the engine of progress, technology, and science. Without the driving force of the smartphone market, the entire tech industry would have evolved along a vastly different path. The relentless demand for smaller, faster, and more power-efficient components for phones is what fueled massive advancements in microprocessors, battery technology, and high-resolution displays. Without that incentive, Moore's law might have slowed down. The processors in our laptops might be bulkier and less powerful. The development of lithium-ion batteries, crucial for everything from electric cars to laptops, would have been significantly less urgent. Think about the app economy. It simply wouldn't exist. Companies like Uber, Instagram, and TikTok were born from the smartphone ecosystem. This means the gig economy, as we know it, might never have taken off. Instead of app-based services, we might see a resurgence or continued dominance of call-in services and dispatch centers. GPS technology would still exist, but it would likely be confined to dedicated, clunky devices in cars, rather than an app in everyone's pocket. This would make navigation for pedestrians and those using public transport far more challenging. What about scientific research? The smartphone is a powerful data collection tool. Citizen science projects, where millions of people contribute data through their phones for everything from weather tracking to protein folding, would be impossible on such a massive scale. Medical research and healthcare would also look different. The rise of telemedicine and health tracking apps would be non-existent. However, it's not all negative. Without the tech world's focus on consumer mobile devices, R&D funding might have been channeled into other areas. Perhaps we'd have seen more rapid progress in robotics, space exploration, or biotechnology, as the brightest minds in engineering were all competing to build the next great app. The internet would have remained a primarily desktop and laptop experience, shaping web design and online culture in a way that prioritizes long-form content over bite-sized, mobile-friendly media. It would be a world of different technological priorities, with innovation happening in different, and perhaps unexpected, directions. So, how would we, as people, be different? What would our society and culture look like without a screen in every pocket? The most immediate change would be in how we interact with each other. Picture a restaurant, a bus, or a public park. Instead of heads buried in phones, people would be looking around, talking to each other, or simply being present in the moment. Boredom, that feeling we so often try to escape with a quick scroll, would be a regular part of life. And psychologists argue that boredom is crucial for creativity and self-reflection. We have to find other ways to fill those in-between moments, reading a book, striking up a conversation with a stranger, or just daydreaming. The concept of a social life would be far more physical and planned. Without instant messaging apps, making plans would require phone calls and commitments. Spontaneity would be harder, and being flaky would have more immediate social consequences. Friendships might be deeper, but perhaps less numerous, centered on people you see and speak with regularly. Photography would return to being a more deliberate hobby. Without a high-quality camera always available, people would use dedicated digital cameras or even film for special occasions. This would make photographs more precious and less disposable. The influencer culture would likely not exist. The very idea of becoming famous by sharing snippets of your daily life would be absurd. Our consumption of media would change too. We'd listen to music on MP3 players or CDs. We'd watch long-form content on TVs or computers. The constant stream of short-form video, news updates, and social feeds that shapes our modern attention spans wouldn't be a factor. People might have longer attention spans and a greater appetite for deep, nuanced content. This world might feel slower, more deliberate, and perhaps more connected in a physical, tangible way. Zooming out, what are the long-term global consequences of a world without smartphones? The economic landscape would be unrecognizable. The companies that dominate our current stock market, Apple, Google, and Meta, might either be smaller players or have completely different business models. The global economy would have missed out on the trillions of dollars generated by the mobile industry, from hardware manufacturing to the app economy. This economic void might have been filled by other industries, or it might have resulted in slower overall global growth. Globalization itself would be different. While the internet would still connect us, the easy, constant, and personal connection facilitated by smartphones would be gone. Cultural exchange would be slower. A viral dance from one country wouldn't spread across the globe in 48 hours. The diffusion of ideas, trends, and languages would revert to a pre-2007 pace, driven by traditional media and travel rather than a global, interconnected social network. This could lead to a world with more distinct and resilient local cultures, less influenced by a homogenized global trend. However, it could also mean a world with less cross-cultural understanding and empathy. Developing nations would have followed a different path. For many in the developing world, the smartphone was their first and only access to the internet, a gateway to banking, education, and economic opportunity. Without it, the digital divide between developed and developing countries would be a vast, unbridgeable chasm, potentially exacerbating global inequality. The nature of work would also be transformed. The rise of remote work and the digital nomad lifestyle is heavily dependent on the constant connectivity that smartphones provide. Without them, work would remain largely tied to a physical office, limiting flexibility and opportunity for millions. In essence, the absence of the smartphone would create a world that is less integrated, less economically dynamic in the tech sector, and potentially more unequal, but also one that is slower, more localized, and less culturally homogeneous. So, here we are, at the end of our thought experiment. A world without smartphones is a world of profound differences. Politics would be less reactive, driven by traditional media. Technology would have evolved in other directions, missing the mobile revolution, but perhaps excelling elsewhere. Society would be more physically present, with longer attention spans but fewer, more localized connections. And globally, we'd see a less integrated but perhaps more culturally diverse planet. There's no easy answer as to whether this world would be better or worse. It's a trade-off. We'd lose the incredible convenience, the instant access to information, and the global connectivity that defines our modern age. But we might gain back some of our focus, our privacy, our creativity born from boredom, and a deeper connection to the people and places immediately around us. It forces us to ask a crucial question: what have we gained from the smartphone revolution, and what have we unknowingly given up in return? The answer is different for everyone. What do you think? Which part of this alternate reality sounds appealing, and what would you miss the most? Thank you so much for joining me on this journey into an alternate timeline. I find these what-if scenarios absolutely fascinating. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, it really helps the channel. And for more explorations into history, technology, and everything in between, make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss our next video. I'd love to hear your thoughts, so drop a comment below and let me know what you think a world without smartphones would be like. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.